Let's now speak to Professor John Stremlau, who's with the Wits International Relations Department. Thank you so much, Prof, for your time this evening. Article 2 and 3 of the Genocide Convention, for example, coming into sharp focus as the order was handed down. This is just among the many other things that the court had to say. But how far-reaching are the implications of this provisional order in your view?
Well, the politics of it, and I'm not a lawyer, but the politics of it are really stunning. South Africa has raised the consciousness of the world on this issue, and it's done so in a very responsible and measured way. And the court has been united. That was really a plus for me. The court was united. You had the American president, you had the Russian deputy president, you had all of the BRICS that were agreed and on board. Only Uganda was dissenting, and then, of course, the Israelis. But what the president of the court indicated today was that, and she could not have done this without consulting with the Biden administration. When I look at the terms that the Biden administration used to condemn the initiative initially, saying it was meritless or unfounded, and then I read what Nalandi Pandor and Dr. Pandor and Anthony Blinken talked about yesterday, I thought, my goodness, we have really come a long way in undermining the credibility of anyone who is opposed to the provisions that were conditionally endorsed by the court today, even though they did not call for a ceasefire. That is on the agenda of Bill Burns, the head of the CIA, who's out there now. Let's have a release of the hostages in return for a 2-month ceasefire and getting some relief to the suffering and horrendous conditions in Gaza that have been perpetrated by an Israeli government, which is the most extremist right-wing government that Israel has ever known, and that Bibi Netanyahu, the prime minister, has always opposed the two-state solution, and yet there was Anthony Blinken and Nalandi Pandor endorsing once again a two-state solution and a pathway to getting to that process is underway. So I think the trade-off for not having a cessation of hostilities endorsed, but all 7 of the other provisions that South Africa had advocated, is a huge win for South Africa morally and politically. And now the hard work is going to have to begin from now and urgently.
And would you say, Prof, though, that what it has done, according to some who share this view, who are saying that it has consolidated international opinion, particularly looking at what is taking place in Gaza?
Absolutely. And, for South Africa to be the champion of this, given its history of apartheid, and that it could find a political resolution of this, I don't think that's possible in the case of Palestine and Israel. They are too wedded to their religions and ethnic identities. But this is a step forward, and for South Africa to re-emerge on the world stage that has not been seen since the time of Mandela, it's a historic occasion. But we should not lose sight of the fact that it's really the suffering Palestinian civilians, women and children, who need help immediately. And that's what I think the team from South Africa effectively lobbied for and got, because what the president of the court, Donahue, was saying was basically quoting from the South African memorandum of late December, the 84 pages that really laid out the justification for what was affirmed today by the overwhelming majority, almost unanimous, of the World Court.
And earlier on, we were in conversation with an Israeli human rights lawyer who says that for him, it's quite significant that this particular order comes on the eve of the remembrance of Holocaust Day. You agree?
Of course, I agree. And it's ironic that the Israelis should be, and I think are guilty of complicity and actions that are contrary to the spirit and letter of the Genocide Convention. An Israeli former negotiator, writing in the New York Times just a couple of days ago, said that South Africans may have already done more to change the course of events than 3 months of hand-wringing by America, and that in fact the Biden administration can now benefit from the consciousness and clarity of the South African win at the World Court on provisional measures that have to be pursued immediately, given the suffering of innocent civilians in Palestine, and that's undeniable.
As a final question then, Prof, how much of a spotlight does this also put on our foreign policy now? Because South Africa has always said that human rights is at the center of its foreign policy. Others saying they don't agree because it's not applied evenly. But I wonder then how much of a spotlight is now on our foreign policy?
Well, the spotlight is there, but you've got to get through an election in 2024, just as the Americans do, because if the Biden administration is replaced by the Trump administration, God help us all. And similarly, the factions in the ANC, and I'm a member, nevertheless, are paralyzing to this country's return to the world stage. This was a very hopeful sign of a return, but we do need to get our domestic house in order before we can be really effective on the world stage.
All right, Prof, thank you so much for your time. Do appreciate you staying with us. That is Professor John Stremlau, Wits International Relations Department.